Now, I'm going to say from the start that I don't know what he's talking about because I'm the only person I know that doesn't have an accent. I also may not have a best friend after the end of today as well, so that's a shame. But one thing I do have are a lot of books, and I want to do a little bit of audience participation here for a second and ask if anyone here, put your hand up, like me, if you've got like a ridiculously overstuffed product management bookcase somewhere in your house with loads and loads of books in it, potentially tastefully put behind you in the webcam shop, just like I have. And I want you to keep your hand up if you've read all of the books on that shelf. There are a lot of books out there. There are books about all the different types of things. There are books about product principles and leadership, empowerment, OKRs, discovery, AI. There's new books about AI all the time. Agile. There's books about cross-functional teams and self-improvement, and even more books about AI. There's probably been more books written about AI since I started doing the talk because it's such a hot topic at the moment. And of course now, people are using AI to write books as well, so it's even going to get worse. And it seems almost like everyone is writing a book. Even some of the people among us are writing books. And I'm sure many of them are available upstairs, potentially signed at a reasonable price. Yeah. But look, I personally have not written a book yet. I probably won't. I don't think I've got the attention span. But I don't get off the hook because it's not just about books. There's Substack newsletters and blogs. There's Medium articles, and there's podcasts like mine, and new ones every week, as it turns out. YouTube videos and TikToks. There's the ever-present LinkedIn content grinders that are sort of sitting there pumping insights out on a daily basis, almost like it's on a schedule. There's even the intoxicating idea of right-wing, anti-woke product management on X these days as well. These people are everywhere, and it just generally feels to me like we're drowning in a sea of content. There's always too much. I can't keep up. I don't know how people know where to go to get it. And also, frankly, I think there might be more people writing things about product management than there are things to write about product management. However, I am going to stand up for the books just a little bit to start with before we start talking about some of the problems, not with the books, but how we maybe see the books or how we use the books. If we think about these books, many of these books were written by some of the finest thought leaders out there. Like there were people, and of course some of those people are here too, so we have to say that really. But at the same time, I think it's true, these people have worked for and with some of the best companies in the world, and they've come back to tell the tale. They've come back to tell us what's worked and to trying to inspire us to do better. And let's face it, I know loads of people that have written books that didn't get anywhere with their books. They barely sold any copies. They spent a year, more than a year, to try and get this stuff done, and it had a minimal impact on their career or their standing. Obviously, some people hit, and they hit big, and that's fantastic, and I applaud those people. But it's not a guarantee, and we should appreciate the effort. And ultimately, these books are, or should be, seen as inspirational guides to our inevitable future success. As I say, these people have come back from the companies where they've seen this stuff work, they've survived, they've come back to tell the tale, and if we just do this, then it's all going to be okay. So why does it very often feel like this? You're sitting there, poor old product manager, blood all over them, thorns in their hair, daggers and sticks in their back, while a pristine, shiny thought leader is telling them that if they just do this, it's all going to be okay. The product manager sits there and thinks, well, this doesn't feel like where I work at all. And they start to get a little bit demotivated. So let's talk a bit about that demotivation and why these books can make us feel a little bit sad. I like to think of this kind of basic idea of a normal distribution of product management skills and how we kind of condense skills down into a one matrix or whatever. But there's some kind of big fat middle of pretty decent, okay product managers, maybe some superstars at the top, and some maybe not very good ones down the bottom. The same as any career, and it's just natural that there's going to be a distribution. And you're probably all sitting there now putting yourselves and all of your colleagues into different parts of the graph. That's fine. However, what we find is a lot of people, as they read book after book after book, is they start to feel that they're not really doing anything properly. And they start to feel like everyone's down the bottom and there's barely any people at the top at all. And it starts to make us feel like we're not doing a very good job. But we do have to call out, and I'm probably not the first person, it's not exactly a surprise, that product management is a super messy career. There's very little standardization of job roles. It's not like you could go from one place to another and it's just exactly the same. If people are job hunting, you'll see that all of the job specs look like they're written about different jobs. All of the companies are different to each other. All of the different types of kind of dynamics within the companies seem to mean that the job just feels like a little bit different. And it's not easy to kind of define, certainly within the roles, but also across companies as well. Which leaves PMs, and maybe some of you here, feeling a little bit demotivated or confused. And I was actually speaking to someone recently who said to me her team was frustrated because they thought that product management should be easy, and it wasn't, and they felt that they were doing something wrong. And that made me feel a little bit sad, because of course it's never going to be easy. Whoever said it was going to be easy? But people are feeling this, and they're feeling the pain, because they don't want to be seen as bad product managers. Now, we've all seen the good product manager, bad product manager, CEO of product, and no one really serious says that anymore. But at the same time, there is this kind of narrative that there's the best and there's the rest. And if you're not part of the best, you're part of the rest. Just do some of these things, and it's all going to be fine. And people start to worry that they're part of the rest, and they start losing hope that they can ever improve anything. But no book can contain every context. And Phil already said this now, but the perfect PM book would be called It Depends. It would be 100,000 pages long. It would be instantly out of date as soon as it was released, because there's just so many different things and so many different contexts and so much change, AI being a part of that. Have to get the AI bit in there as well. But also just in general, things change all the time. This stuff isn't easy. It's impossible to encapsulate it all within one book. And no one, frankly, is even really trying. But we look at these books as Bibles versus inspirational tomes that can kind of help us in a certain direction. I think, frankly, we start to take them a little bit too seriously. Because actually, even the authors, and again, some of the authors, hopefully in the room, if they've not all gone to a different talk, they will also, often publicly and sometimes privately, they will say, this stuff is hard. Yes, I did write a book about doing this thing, but actually I got to do this thing once in my career, and it worked really well. So I wanted to get people to do that and try to do that in their careers. And now I try to do that in all of my other jobs. But they're never going to sit there, for the most part, saying that they did that in all of the jobs that they ever had. And also, frankly, there are a number of cherry-picked transformation examples that you see out there from all these different people that are saying that they've done it. You go and speak to the people that work there, and they kind of tell you a slightly different story. Cherry-picking is understandable, but it means that you should sometimes take some of these stories with a little bit of a pinch of salt and just try and look at the principles that underpin them versus expecting that you can do exactly the same thing. So let's talk about what to do about it. I've got 9 minutes and 14 seconds left. You might sit there and think, well, what I'm saying then is burn all the books. There's no point. There's some upstairs. No, don't burn them. Do not burn the books. I will say, on the record, I'm not against books. Obviously, I buy books all the time. Many of my best friends are authors, as they say. But at the same time, you have to take books with the relevant size pinch of salt. And I don't think it's worth, again, treating them as Bibles and kind of almost like, like a list of things that if you don't do all of those things, you've failed the book. And that's it. You need to move on and maybe read it again or try and do it again or whatever it is you need to do. These books, again, are incredibly valuable resources, and you should always try and learn what you can, but try and do what you can with that to do something with it and make sure that you're not just treating it as like a binary pass or fail. There's a concept I like, which I discussed with John Cutler on the podcast. I'm sure everyone loves John, talking about the learning Kanban, this idea that people, and again, we all admitted earlier not to reading all of the books that we have, spend a lot of time reading stuff and trying to kind of consume as much knowledge. I remember at the beginning of the year, I set myself a 1 book a week challenge. I'm going to read a book every week and then post about it on LinkedIn. And I gave up on that after a while because it started to get a bit much. But at the same time, there's this idea that actually we're spending too much time putting stuff in progress, i.e. we're just reading the books and we move on to the next book and we move on to the next book. But we never actually get anything done. We don't start to do anything from the books because all we're doing is reading, consuming knowledge, and we forget to do anything with it. Now, that means that you've read a lot of very interesting and hopefully quite inspirational books, but if you're not doing anything with them, I mean, arguably you could have saved yourself a few hours. It's also fair to say that our stakeholders are not reading these books. The people that we have to... I didn't stage this photo. This was something that I saw at a client's office. And I'm not even having a go at Marty. I love Marty and I love Marty's books. But these could have been any books. But this is the inevitable fate of any kind of let's buy everyone in the company a book initiative, which I'm sure that we've all seen. Because ultimately, we're sitting there expecting to win the debate or the argument about product practices with people using books that they've never heard of, by authors that they've never heard of, that use phrases and terminology that they've never heard of. But guess what? We don't get off the hook here, because how many of other people's books do we read? Like, how many sales books do we read? How many business and finance books? You know, how many books do we read to understand our stakeholders and what they've all got their own Marty Kagans and Teresa Torres's and Melissa Perry's. They've all got their own versions of those too. We're not reading their books, and they ain't reading ours. So you sit there, okay, well, am I sitting there and just say, do whatever? It doesn't matter. Just do whatever you want. It doesn't, whatever everyone said today is all nonsense. You just do whatever you need to do to get stuff done. Of course, I'm not saying that. I think it's important to call out that these books that we read and that we consume on a regular basis are all based, again, on things that have worked or that have been seen to be worked. And there are principles that underpin these books. And there are things that we can always do, try to make sure that we can make things better. There's things that we should work on and we can work on, even in the most dysfunctional company. Things around like how decisions are made, like what are the vision and the strategy that we underpin? What's the evidence that we have to support our decision making? How do we build our products? Are we building stuff, solutions the right size? Are we kind of engaging the engineering team and getting stuff out as quickly as possible? Are we actually getting stuff out to market and tracking success, not simply by the fact that we've delivered stuff, but that we've actually delivered stuff that people can use and that actually makes money for our companies? How do we measure success? Like, have we actually set up any kind of metrics? Do we even have the capability to understand like what's happening with our products and making decisions, feeding back round to decisions again, to make sure that we're making the best decisions for our products, for our users, and for our business? All underpinned by having fundamental product skills and mindset. David was talking about that just now, this idea that there are things that we need to be able to do to drive forward and be effective product managers. And if Bruce is still here, hopefully he won't beat me up, but talking about alignment as well, like obviously the book that he wrote with Melissa, this idea that none of this matters one little bit if no one in the company knows what we're doing. Because if no one knows what we're doing, then we might as well not be doing it, because everyone's going to be firing off into different directions. Now, there are loads of things underpinning all of these, but there's always something that you can try. The most important thing is not to lose heart or start to get worried about the size of the change that you might be looking at, or the impossible standard that might be being set by a book that you've read that describes something very different to where you are today. So we go back to our Kanban. So we don't just not overload our learning Kanban, but let's not try to overload our change Kanban as well. There's like this future where you want to get to, wherever that is. That's, to Pippa's earlier point about, the Marty Kagan with the robes on. There's the future, and there's where we are today. And there's loads of things that we could probably do to get there. Let's not try to do them all at once, because all that does is clog up the work in progress, and we end up making no progress at all. It's important to try and make little changes and continue to make little changes and make those changes stick and demonstrate the progress that we're making. I like to call this applying product management to product management. The idea that you can diagnose, and I actually don't think inventorize is a word. For any non-native speakers here, I might have made that word up. Diagnose and inventorize, work out what the situation and the status quo is. That's a lot of work that I do with clients as well. It's fun work to kind of pull the stuff out. But of course, then you need to prioritize. You need to make sure that you're building or you're working or changing the most important next thing. I'm very annoyed that minimum viable improvement turns out to have already been used by someone. I thought this could be a new thing and something that I could maybe put a trademark on, but there is already other people talking about it. But the concept for me makes sense. What is the next smallest thing we can do to move things forward, again, towards this future that we want to be in? What could we do today? How can we make any progress? How can we demonstrate that? How can we communicate and share that with the business and prove that has made a difference? And then we either go back to our diagnosis again, or maybe if we're pretty confident, we can just jump to the next thing in the list. But ultimately kind of continuously reprioritizing and making sure that we're working on the next most impactful thing. That's how we build products. That's also how we can build product organizations. And again, try and live up to this idealized version that are in many of the books. We talk about outcomes over outputs a lot in product management, and it's almost become a cliche. The fact that we should be focusing on results. We should be focusing on doing the most important thing for our customers, for our business, and that whilst it's not whilst outputs are not irrelevant, just focusing on outputs is not, not the goal. It's for some companies, but it shouldn't be the goal. I might also reframe this as outcomes are better than outputs. There's not like, don't do 0% outputs, but outcomes are better than outputs. And then I come to my thing that always sounds better when I say it in my head. Better is better than not better. It trips off the tongue. It's probably my accent that's doing that. But anyway, the point is that whatever or wherever you are in your journey towards the kind of the book ideal, again, you may sit there and think, well, I can't do all of the things. So therefore, I'm not even going to try and do any of the things. And I'm just going to give up. I'm going to lay down and just do whatever. I don't recommend that. When I work with clients, I don't tell them to do that. I always try to focus on how can we make things just a little bit better and move us forward just a little bit, prove that that works, and then move on and do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And if you keep going down that path, then you never know how close to the books you're going to get. So that's me talking all about that. If anyone wants to listen to my accent even more on the podcast, you can go and find that, and there's loads of writing and other ways to contact me, so I'd love to chat if any of this resonates. But that is me, and I've got 47 seconds left, so there you go.